A lot of people are feeling that under the cloak of COVID, our mayor, Jenny Durkan, is trying to ditch the police consent decree. Daryl, can you put up the slide, please? So the NAACP, they clapped back against Mayor Durkan, put out a statement that they read at the city council on Monday, basically saying that Mayor Durkan was trying to side with the Trump administration, DOJ, Department of Justice, and removing the police decree. So I'll tell you a little bit about the decree. And also we have a clip from about 6 months ago from Q13 that we'll play here in a second. So basically, with the consent decree, what has occurred is that the SPD the SPD really used to beat up a lot of people, use excessive force. I mean, it was out of control. I was 16. The Seattle police beat us up. You know what I'm saying? And look how long ago that was. That was my son's age during weed and seed. And they used to jump out the Astro vans and all that. So anyways, Seattle Police Department, like almost 10 years, man, the feds had to come in because, they said that these guys used way too much force and they weren't accountable. And so they've been under consent decree, and we'll see in this clip from Q13 6 months ago, the actual numbers have gone down. So, I don't think anybody would argue that the SPD has come in line. But what's happening is Mayor Durkan is wanting to get rid of the consent decree right now, because I don't know if it's just the timing or if it's because, it's COVID and other people might not be looking. She wants to get rid of the consent decree, which it very well, it might be that time. But the thing is there's also a negotiation going on with the Seattle Police Department with their union. And in the union, the police department is rejecting accountability measures that, people want to be in the contract. So imagine that it's probably one of the few jobs that the accountability measures are kind of low. You know what I'm saying? So anyways, let's look at this clip from Q13 for 6 months ago, and we'll discuss further on the other side.
Big step for the Seattle Police Department getting out of federal oversight. New numbers show a dramatic decline in the department's use of force.
Yeah, remember that police officers using unconstitutional force is what sparked the consent decree in the first place. Simone Del Rosario has these new numbers from the Department of Justice tonight and explains what they mean.
So what we're seeing is just a drastic change from our Seattle police officers from before the consent decree until now. And the department has been under federal oversight for 7 years, specifically because of excessive force and biased policing allegations. Well, today's numbers mean they are this much closer to being done with the consent decree, and it shows how much less officers are turning to serious force while policing, even when it's considered justified. So let's take a look at those numbers. Before the consent decree, between 2009 and 2011, the Department of Justice noted serious use of force in more than 1,200 incidents. The same time frame, 8 years later, that number is all the way down to 454. That is a 63% decline in using serious force in general. Now, the city's crediting new policies and training that emphasize de-escalation for that. The change is even more dramatic when you consider force that does not fit into policy. When the Department of Justice first investigated SPD, they said that serious use of force was unconstitutional in 1 out of every 5 cases where it was used. Fast forward 8 years, SPD says there are only 12 cases total that they considered out of policy over a roughly 2-year period.
So if SPD is the one examining their own numbers, who's checking on them to make sure those numbers are, in fact, correct?
Right. So part of this consent decree process means that SPD is, in fact, bringing forward their own numbers with self-assessment to prove that they're still staying in compliance. Of course, the Department of Justice is checking those numbers. That's where I got these from.
Okay. So this is very good news for the department, but does it mean the end to the consent decree?
David, they can be so close if they follow along this path. We're talking about January before the city can go to a court and petition to terminate this consent decree. Now, the holdup is that they've clearly made strides with excessive force and other reforms, but a federal judge still says the department has an issue with holding its officers accountable. They used this as an example.
You're escalating this by... You kicked me.
So that's Officer Adley Shepard punching a handcuffed woman after she kicked him back in 2014. He was originally fired, then he was reinstated through an arbitration process. Now, the judge criticized the agreement with the police union in the city that allowed that arbitration to happen. Now the city has just a few months to get back under compliance about how to hold these officers accountable if they do, in fact, want to be able to get out from under federal oversight in January. As we've said, this is such a long process for them. Since 2009, they've been investigated. So we're talking about a decade.
Wow.
Still a lot of work left to do. Big step forward, though.
Yes, absolutely.
So yeah, so we could see that was Q13 back in November. You know, I don't think that a lot of people would argue that there's been a shift in policing in Seattle. I don't think that a lot of people would argue that, you know, Chief Best, the current chief, is you know, doing her best to bring a climate in there. And you know, Seattle police, for the most part, people are recognizing their efforts really during COVID-19. However, man, accountability is important in any profession. You know what I'm saying? Especially a profession where you have the public's trust. So, you know, the NAACP, go ahead, put that graphic back up there, Daryl. The NAACP, you know, made their voice heard loud and clear to the city council. And I mean, you know, what they said in here in this statement, you can find it on the NAACP for Seattle King County. You can keep it up there, Daryl, please. Seattle King County's their website. But basically, you know, what they're saying is, one, is that the decree shouldn't be removed because, you know, there's no accountability in the contract. And the other thing is, you know, they were very clear that they feel that, you know, Mayor Durkan is teaming up with the Trump Department of Justice. Trump DOJ is real different these days. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's what we see as what we've known as Department of Justice. They're cutting all kinds of people loose. They're doing, you know, it's for the general public. The general public doesn't have the trust in the Department of Justice that it used to have. And so, you know, I think we can expect this issue to continue to be an issue in our community, and we'll see what some of the other community people are saying. And it's interesting right now at the timing as well, that she wants to release the decree right now. I mean, it's like, why not wait until a few months until there's a sense of normalcy in the city and everything else? Why do you want to release this decree right now during COVID? You know, so it's some good concerns that are brought up by the NAACP.
Absolutely. And I agree with them. I mean, first of all, I'm a little bit concerned when anything is trying to take place that doesn't have the community's attention right now. COVID is got all of us kind of focused on COVID. And so it does make me concerned that she's doing this during this time, but also that she's wanting to do it at all. I mean, my thing is accountability needs to be embedded in how our force is dealing with the public. That is something that is known, you know, throughout, you know, the world, really. I mean, accountability is a thing. We need to keep that order in place. That's what I think. I don't think that she should be trying to lift it at all.
Well, the thing is, so we're getting some feedback here on Facebook and in the comments. We got a comment here. One of our viewers saying, like, man, it needs to, all incidents need to be reduced more. And I mean, I hear that as somebody, you know what I'm saying, who was a victim of literally getting my ass kicked by the Seattle Police Department, you know what I'm saying, as a young kid, 16 years old. You know, and going through weed and seed and going through all these things. People might not understand, especially if you're not black from the Central District and you might be watching these broadcasts and you're like, oh, well, hey, it's the police, this and that. Man, we got a history with SPD. And the best thing is, as black people, as usual, you know, we're real understanding, forgiving, and this and that. You know, you try to make the best out of relationships. But we got a history with the Seattle Police Department. You know what I'm saying? A real serious one. And it's understandable when we get people in our community who are against, you know what I'm saying, lifting this decree until there's accountability in the contract, because time and time again, there's people that literally used to kick our ass. You know what I'm saying? You file a complaint disappears somewhere, they stay on the force. Zero accountability. So again, we're going to stay on top of this story.
I love that. Oh, we have to, you know, at the end of the day, you know, we are here for the community voice, and it just feels like this decision and what she's doing and trying to do it during COVID is definitely not something known to the community. So I'm glad that we're mentioning this and bringing this to people's attention today.
Right. We're going to go to break right now. When we come back, we got KY King Garrett. You are watching the Morning Update Show right here on the Africatown Media Network.